I do like that, Simple Faith. I love the name of the podcast because I am a simple person. The older I get, the more simple I become.
Me too. Hey, welcome to Simple Faith with Rusty George. We are back for a brand new season. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you know we've added a little bit of swag here to the table. And if you want to send in like a coffee mug or something like that, we'll put it up here. We'll put it up here on the table. That'd be kind of fun. Well, today we're going to kick things off in this new season by talking to a new friend of the show, a guy by the name of Dino Rizzo. And if you're thinking, that sounds Italian, well, you're right. He is Italian, and he's also an incredible author and pastor that is also the president of ARC, Church Planting Solutions. He's an incredible guy who's written a great book on how to revolutionize your life and your church through serving. I know you're going to love what he has to say, so here is my conversation with Dino Rizzo. Dino Rizzo, thank you for joining the podcast. Am I saying your name right? Is it as written?
It is as written. Good Italian.
Italian. Are you full-blooded, half-blooded? Give me the lineage here.
You know, it depends on the day. Sometimes full-blooded, but more half-blooded.
Okay. And you're from the South, Alabama always, or Florida? Tell me kind of where you're from.
Born in Charlotte, raised in Myrtle Beach, pastored in Baton Rouge for 20 years, and now I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, here at Church of the Highlands and at ARC.
Hey, feel like your devotional time's a little dry? Pick up a copy of Friend of God, out now, and we'll walk through the gospel and the letters and the revelation of John in 40 days. Guys, it's short enough, you can even read it. Trust me. So pick up a copy of Friend of God wherever books are sold, or to get it cheaper, go to PastorRustyGeorge.com. We'll send it right to you. Okay, so you're all SEC and ACC country. That's kind of what you've always grown up with.
Yeah, that is a good way to put it.
Okay, well, for our listeners, just tell us a snapshot of who you are, what you've been doing, and what you are doing right now.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's always an honor and always humbling to get to share a little bit with yourself and, of course, the audience and those that are listening. But I was not raised in church. I came to Christ because the church did an outreach. So I'm the fruit of an outreach, a creative outreach that they did at the beach. And I gave my life to Christ, ended up going to Bible college, had a heart for youth ministry. You know, most roads start at student ministry in some J-High camp. And so I was there I did it for about 7 years, loved it. And then my wife and I transitioned and we planted a church in Baton Rouge in 1992. We were babies and we were there for 20 years. During that time, myself, along with the founder of ARC, Billy Hornsby, Greg Surratt, we launched Billy's brother, Scott. We launched two churches, which was Church of the Highlands and New Life, to try this thing called ARC. And ARC is now 23 years old. And I relocated to Birmingham 12 years ago to work at Church of the Highlands and to help lead ARC. So that's what I do currently, and loving it, living the dream, and thankful for a good wife and 3 children. One is married, one's engaged, just had a granddaughter. So I'm in the sweet spot of life.
That is fun. Okay, so for those that don't know, ARC stands for Association of Related Churches. Is that right? Tell me how you all came up with that name.
Yeah, well, we were in such a relationship. I mean, it could have been called, Association of Church Planting, but really it all bore out of a relationship. That is what you need the most when you are starting a church. You better have some good relationships to learn from, to be accountable to get resources from. And so that's where we came up with that idea. It was in a quick meeting, but we knew what we were. We were a group of guys and our wives that just wanted to be in a relationship and help new couples that wanted to go plant a church and start a church and maybe try to help them get off the ground quick, better, stronger. And God's helped us as of to date. I think it's 1,114 churches have been planted the last 23 years. And to God be the glory.
That is amazing. So I would imagine over the course of time that you've been doing this, you've seen the way churches get started There's some similar traits, and then there are some different traits. Are things different post-COVID in how churches are launching versus the way they were before that? Are you seeing some new trends when it comes to those church planners out there?
Yes. I mean, I think there's seasons where church planning was in 2-wheel drive. It's all in 4-wheel drive now. I mean, there may have been moments or cities or teams where it was like flag football. It's full contact now spiritually, family, mental, soul, your heart, getting in a city, raising resources, building a team, finding a location, putting the work in the spiritual. So it's definitely intensified. I think everything, I don't know if the word harder is the right word. I think everything is a little more intense. It's a little bit more, if you grip it, at 70%, you're having to grip everything at about 90% now as you build the church, build small groups, develop and see people come into discipleship, fully devoted followers, create worship space, encounters with God, engage your community, identify the next generation who can, so I think it's all that way. And especially in the area of church planning, we're seeing it in church planning. Hard to find locations. Everything's more expensive. There's a lot of great churches in the country that are planning campuses. So you're finding a good space where you're not crowding or finding that undersaturated area where you can build a church. And then I think making sure that couples are getting planted and they're healthy.
That's so good. Are there anything or any locations, I should say, that you're seeing churches try and find success at besides the typical movie theater or school? Are you finding anything else that's out there people are using?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And you're right. There are, the schools have always worked. Movie theaters have always worked. You see some guys right now doing some shared space. Okay. Where it is something else during the week, but they have some meeting space that can be pop up. Yeah. That can be retrofitted on the weekend. You're seeing some pop up in some, there's churches in art galleries. There's churches right now meeting in community centers. There's churches that are meeting in there's a church right now that there's a library that they have a great theater. And so they're meeting in that. And then I'll tell you that what some guys are doing right now is some people are leasing a space from the beginning. They've just raised the resources. That used to be kind of don't do that, don't spend that kind of money. But I think because of COVID and the challenge it did to location and space, that if you didn't have something permanent, so many people did not get to have church. And we're not able to go back into a space. We've got churches that launched and 5 weeks later didn't have church for 32 weeks. I talked to a guy the other day that launched and after 8 weeks did not meet for a whole year. And so if you've got a location, so church planners are trying to find a little bit more permanency quicker these days so that they can go ahead and have some type of meeting, even if it's small and it's multiple services from the start. So I think that's some of the creative ways people are approaching it. And of course, always utilizing all the things online.
Yeah, I'm also seeing some people deciding on different days of the week too. Obviously Sunday is the target, but sometimes you can't find a space then. So I think there's some churches that are trying Thursday night services, Monday night services, Wednesday. Are you seeing some of that as well where you're planting?
Yeah, I'm like you. I think the optimal hour is always that Sunday. So you're trying to get those guys to launch that new church. And it's a new church, So there's there's great churches everywhere. We're trying to find some lanes and some places where you can, a little bit of, I call it, get out there and get you a little bit of yard where you plant a tree and have a little bit of yard. You don't want to plant trees up under big shade trees. Right. So we're and sometimes that happens where there's an alternative time. I've got a couple of guys right now that are meeting Sunday afternoon. It works in their culture. It works in their dynamic. And so, you want the Sunday, but people are doing things on Saturday night and Sunday nights. And even during the week, they're doing those things. It's hard to have the primary service there. but you got to do what you got to do when you're starting off.
Yeah. One of the things I've always been really obsessed about is understanding the target audience. I did ministry in California for 20 years and, really figuring out what that climate looked like. And it was a lot of unchurched people. They either had Catholic background or no church background whatsoever. But now that I'm back more in the Midwest and now in Texas, it's a lot more of less unchurched, but more de-churched. They've been there, they've seen it, they've done it, and now they just don't have time for it. What are you seeing where you guys are planting churches right now, and certainly where you are down in the South? Are you seeing a lot of de-churched? What's a typical de-churched person look like? What are they looking for if they decide to check out a brand new church?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've analyzed it well. So what you're seeing, what you saw, what you're experiencing, that's why I love talking to people who pastor, because we're all in this thing. We're all in the trenches. We're all we use the word, we're all trying to crack the code of our community, trying to figure out what is that combination? How does it work here? What are the demographics? What are the patterns? What are the people patterns in a city, in a region? So they are different. I mean, what you're seeing in the Northeast right now, I was up there in New Jersey and New York meeting with some guys recently. They're walking through a different dynamic with some of the economic pressure right now. And then you go into some other West Coast, they're dealing with some exodus of people, moving some of their key leaders. I talked to a guy the other day, has a big church, but he's lost half of his leaders, have moved. So all of that is a dynamic to leadership, into providing the vision and the mission to people. And so you're seeing that happen. But yes, of course, and I think, we have the de-church and the unchurched and the non-church, but, it's a reflection of humanity right now. Humanity it's just waffling. Humanity is in the valley of decision, as the Bible talks about, where people are just, I don't know, all kinds of people, whether you're blended families, single moms, Gen X, Gen Z, Boomer, all the categories that you can throw out there that get labeled. But at the end of the day, we have humanity that is shifting, humanity that is fearful, humanity that is suffering and struggling. And we're just trying to figure out a way to reach them with the cause of Jesus Christ, with the only hope and the only answer that works today. And so I think we do have a church challenge, but it stems from a human challenge. It's kind of how I think about it. That way a church planter doesn't think, man, it's too hard to plant here. Yeah. My city is the hardest. There's some truth to that, but as you know, you can't get in that rut too much, because then you can make excuses, or then you can, give up, or, let the enemy win.
Right. Oh, that's such a good word. You're exactly right. Sometimes we do get too focused on that, or think, but I love the phrase, this is where churches go to die, this particular city. We're trying to crack the code here, which is a little bit of, okay, I appreciate that in the marketing brochure, but man, at some point you're going to start to believe that, So I think it can become kind of overwhelming for people. I was curious about this as you were talking, because I know that you speak a lot at Church of the Highlands, which is a massive church with 26 locations, thousands of people in the room, tens to hundreds of thousands watching online. But then you have also spoken in churches of 100 or 300 people. As a communicator, because you're a great communicator, how do you adjust based on the audience? I'm always fascinated by this. And sometimes it's the size of the room. Sometimes it's knowing how many people are listening and knowing I better look at the camera more than I scale the room. Just as a communicator goes, how are you thinking through working a room of 300 versus a room of, let's say, 30,000?
Yeah, well, you're ever learning, you're ever growing in that area. There's days I feel like when I speak, I please the Lord and I rung the bell. And then there are days I get done and I'm like, oh Lord, why? God help me. The mercy of God better be involved, but I think at my age now, you realize the power is in the word. Yeah. The power is in the truth. The power is in the scripture. But the reality is there are aesthetics. There are things about the room. There are things about meeting areas. There are things about sound and lighting and feedback and the acoustics, the stage location, where the chairs are. Are people in the front, or are they scattered all around like BBs in a boxcar? I mean, you end up in all these different dynamics. Are people watching the iMac, or are they watching you? Are you speaking to campus, or is it all about the live experience? And you're right. I get the privilege, and Pastor Chris has built an amazing church, and it's one of my favorite communicators. I think one of the best communicators. I've learned a lot from him being here the last 12 years, but then I do jump. And 12 days ago, I spoke to 400 high school students in a theater.
Oh my!
So I did a junior high small group just recently. I'll go speak at the correctional facility. I'll go do a homeless outreach. I like doing all those things because I think it challenges me to as a communicator, and it challenges me to keep my heart right. That I got to keep my heart right. I got to keep my spirit right. And so it is a privilege to speak on the stage at Highlands when you're communicating to that many people at 26 locations, and it's tens of thousands of people. But in my heart, I felt just as I felt the weight of it this weekend out in Vacaville with at the Father's house. Had 3 services, great room, have great aesthetics, great lighting, great sound, but great people. And they get good preaching. But, and I was in Minnesota yesterday speaking at a church. I've been in Minnesota. And so I enjoy all that. And I think what helps me is, you're trying to talk to one person, to be honest with you. You're just trying to talk to one person in the room. There's 30,000 people that are listening to that conversation. You're just trying to, by the power of the Holy Spirit and by the power of the Scripture, you're just trying to get out of the way and let God do something. But I think the thing that I've had to learn, you got to be comfortable in your skin, and you got to know the way God wired you and made you. I think comparison, it's detrimental to the creative thing that God puts in you. So I had to learn the hard way that I'm a storyteller, that I like making people laugh. I love the Gospels, and I'm a preacher. I do points, I can teach, but that's not where my strength is. But there was years that I was trying to be somebody else, and somebody else was doing stuff. And, you're just so, I got to preach like that. I got to teach like that. I got to sit on the stool. I need to use the television. I got to go out in the crowd. I need to preach and really, but to me, until you get comfortable in your skin, you find your voice, again, by trial and error. If you got a good wife and you got some good friends that say, man, that didn't work. And I had a lot of that in my life. So now you're just trying to walk on stage and think, man, that's a privilege. It's not by power or might. It's by his Spirit. Yeah. I must decrease. He must increase. And you're just trying to, handle the precious, sacred word of God the best you can.
That's so good. Some pastor gave me some great advice years ago. He said, we all walk out on stage wondering if they like me, but they're wondering, does he like me? And being able to go out there and encourage your people, and love them, because typically, we're all up in our head and we're wondering, is this going to work? Is this going to be funny? Is this going to be brilliant? And we've always got that person in our head from last week that wrote us the negative email we're trying to impress or prove wrong. And it just doesn't work, man.
I'll say this. There was a time when we opened up our new building. We built a pretty cool building in Baton Rouge, and I was pastoring Healing Place for those 20 years. And I started on Saturday because I would get in my head. And what you're doing, you start, what are they thinking? How did I do? And I heard Joyce Meyer saying that, the reason why you're nervous is because you're thinking about yourself. And you're too self-aware. And so I would go up on Saturday during my prayer time and sit in a different seat in the auditorium on a Saturday for about an hour and think about the person sitting in the seat. And then I would see where they were looking at me. What was their angle? How was I communicating to them? And it really began to burn something in my soul for the people. And, loving the people, caring for the people. But I did that for years. I just would go sit in a different seat and imagine what the next day was going to be like. How are they going to receive it? And I think it helped me as a pastor and as a shepherd.
Let me interrupt for just a moment. Did you know we have a YouTube channel? In fact, all of our podcasts are now recorded and placed on YouTube as well. So ever wanted to look at the person I'm talking to? Now you can. Go to Pastor Rusty George on YouTube and subscribe. All right, back to our show. That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, well, one thing I wanted to ask you about is you wrote this book called Servolution a while back, and I've heard you talk about it before on Pastor Chris's podcast, which is a great podcast, Growing Leaders. Yeah. But I want to know, where'd this come from and what is it all about? Tell our listeners about it because, on this podcast, we try to make faith simple, and I can't think of any better way to simplify what it means to have faith and live out the gospel than serving. And you wrote a whole book about it and have initiatives for it and have seen it work in churches. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, I do like that, Simple Faith. I love the name of the podcast because I am a simple person. The older I get, the more simple I become.
Me too.
I'm all about that. Confusing people never works well.
No.
And so, and complicating it. But I was reached through outreach. And so that's naturally been a bent that I think about, okay, how does this distribute to people that are lost, people that are far from God, people that are never going to come to church? They're never going to make the first move, but yet they are searching. And so I was searching. I was on a journey, but I didn't know where to go to church. I didn't know anybody that could go to church. So a church did an outreach, and I was impacted by that. After that outreach, I gave my life to Christ, got involved with a small church. So naturally, I felt like I was a debtor. I felt like there was a mandate for me to do the same of what had been done to me. And so I've always been about missions. I've always been about outreach. We planted a church, my wife, so I pastored, and we did discipleship and leadership development and building out stewardship and all those things. But probably if you cut me, I still bleed outreach. So I wrote a book called Servolution. Matter of fact, I didn't even come up with a name. I was at a meeting with a couple of our creative team, and Jason Laird, who pastors a church in Nashville, when I was describing what my heart was, and we were doing it as a church, and we were reaching people. We built that church on outreach. It was an outreach-driven church. And he said, "Oh, you're talking about a revolution of serving. We want to revolutionize the service." I said, "Yeah, he said, that's a servolution." And so it's interesting how God has blessed that. I think the book is 15 years old, and it did way better than we ever expected. To God be the glory, because it does give some inspiration. It gives information. I followed up with a book called Serve Your City, which is all the nuts and bolts of how to do an outreach small group. And then we have, of course, serveday.com or servolution.org, where I think we put together a list of 500 practical ways or 500 list of outreach. And we make it like, you need a rake. You need 6 people. This will cost you $15. You could do it literally in a box. But so that's been I think that's one of the reasons why I think that's one of the things I'll stand before the Lord on is, did you steward, the outreach that was happened in your life? Did you steward it well to help others? So that's my passion, helping churches engage their city through small, practical ways. Some people call it acts of kindness. Some people call it compassion. I just call it the hands and feet of Jesus. And you do it for the cause of Christ. I mean, I love everything we do, but it's always got to be about the cause of Christ. That's a big thing to our pastor here, Pastor Chris, but it's a big thing to us at Highlands. And what I love too is we're teaching all of our church planners that now. So before they go into a city and do their first service, their launch Sunday, they are serving that city, loving those people, letting them know that we're just not here to preach to you. We're just not here to build a big church. We're here to love you, care for you, and lean into your pain. So that's the idea behind it. And I still get excited about it. We have a serve day, July the 13th, this summer. So there'll be 2,000-3,000 churches around the world that will be doing some form, expression of that. And so we get to resource them and get excited about their stories.
So I've heard churches go to both ends of the extreme on this. Some do the great day of service once a year, and it's awesome, but that's it. And then others that are like, oh, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do a little bit every single day. What's the good rhythm of doing both? Are there too many great days of services on a calendar year? Yeah. Or what's the magic number? And then how do you make sure you're dripping it through?
Yeah, it's a tightrope. You're always trying. Okay, here's what I believe. I think there are three things that I believe. I believe in big events because I think you identify leaders and you identify people who have the heart for it. So I think there are events, there are moments where people are leaning in or they have needs. Back to school, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, and then I think there are times during the year that you can do an all call. We're all doing this. And you've got to do your homework on that to make sure that you've worked with your city, you've worked with those vulnerable communities, you've worked with those areas of your city or region that have a food shortage, widows, military wives, single moms, the vulnerable, the forgotten. And then there are so many things you can do. So I think there are events that are catalysts to do something that is more sustainable. Whether that's a monthly outreach, that's an area of your city that really needs some attention. And so you're looking for leaders that have a heart for that have a gift for that is their why behind the what. That is the reason why they're born. They want to make a difference. They're carved that way. They've been shaped that way. And so you're trying to move from an event to something that you can sustain. We do monthly serve expressions but then some of our campuses do some weekly drips. So it's just on what you can sustain. Because the third thing is you're trying to get to something consistent, which just consistently being there, whether that's we have a food pantry, we work with these widows, we're doing this in this block in our city, we're partnering with this middle school, we're doing this right now with this group of segment of people. And then what happens is the fourth thing, then it becomes something in your culture. So serving and caring for the city is now in our culture. It's not something we do, it's something we are. It's not about the project. See, it's never about the task. It's about the gospel getting to people. We get so caught up in the task. We just got, there's people that you do an outreach and all they're thinking about is cutting grass. It's like, whoa. We're cutting grass for a person. They're up there on the porch. Let's stop the lawnmower and go have a conversation. Let's go find out who they are. They binge over the project. We don't binge over the project. We binge over the people.
Right.
And so that's the training. And then ultimately what you're trying to get to is being a church that has the Great Commission expression. Whether that's in, Sudan or whether that's in Spartanburg. We're just trying to be Great Commission people here that care about others. Because I really believe this. I don't think you could grow a church without some form or fashion of outreach, reach, serve, loving your city through some way you're engaging through partnerships and small groups. Most of our outreach is through small groups. So we're giving them ideas. So when we put 21,000 people out on a serve weekend, probably 70% are through small groups,
That's so
which
good.
makes it so personal and makes it so Jesus style.
I heard somebody say recently that serving is the new apologetic. The way that we love people is really what people are looking for, not so much information and, the trilemma and those kind of things, but rather, did you do anything? Well, man, this has been really, really helpful, Dino. For our listeners that would like to hear more of you, where can they find you? You have a podcast out there as well. Give our people some sites to go look for you.
Yeah, we do. We drop episodes of a thing called Unscripted. So you can find all that at the arcchurches.com or my Instagram, or either a lot of the serve stuff is at serveday.com, servolution.org. But Arc Churches is a good landing place for the unscripted. I do like you, and we're similar in our heart. I want to learn from people. I want to have conversations where cool people are doing things. We drop about 16 of those a year in different episodes, different seasons. But but these are good times. These are challenging times, but these are good times to be about the gospel. And I love sticking to that. We're just doing our best here at Highlands at ARC, sticking to the gospel, and we're having a blast.
Well, keep up the great work, buddy. Thank you for all you've done, and thanks for spending some time with us. I know that we got connected by our mutual friend, Jason Delgado, and I'm really grateful for that connection.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show, my man. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me. It's always a humble honor to hang out with you.
after the Bible and John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws, there really isn't any other books need to be written. And I've written 4 of them with 3 more in the hopper. Okay. But
I've never heard those 2 books put side by side like that, but you may be right there. Well, thank you, Dino. Just great stuff. I just love that content, and maybe you're going to want to share this with a friend. I would ask you to go ahead and rate and review the show if you don't mind, and then go ahead and share it with a friend. Get the word out there. If you haven't subscribed already on the YouTube channel, make sure you do that and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, we're back with the beginning of a new season of Leading Simple. So as part of the Simple universe, you're going to get Simple Faith. You're going to get Leading Simple. Simple Faith is more kind of day-to-day living. Leading Simple is more kind of leadership principles. And we're going to have a chance to hear from one of our favorite guests on the show, a guy by the name of Brian Dodd, as we talk all things leadership, levels of leadership, and even probably some college football as well, because we often do. Hey, send us a coffee mug or something to put on the table. Crossroads Christian Church in Grand Prairie, Texas, care of Rusty George. We'll get it up here on the table and give you a shout out as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll be back next week with our first edition of the new season of Leading Simple.